Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you all this morning. Today, we're continuing our series, Love in Action, where we're talking about what it means to serve like Jesus. Seniors, today is a big day for you. We as a congregation have been blessed to honor you and your upcoming accomplishment, and we're so excited for what lies ahead for you. As I stand up here today, I'm reminded what it was like to sit in those very chairs, to stand before the congregation and receive a Bible from the elders and to be prayed over and celebrated. And to be honest, it was a blur. It moved quickly. I remember the love, I remember the feelings, I remember the cards. But it moved quickly. And the next couple months of your life will move very quickly. There's one thing I could say to you, it would be to take your time, enjoy it. See what God has for you in these next couple months before you start this new chapter in your life. But as you do start this new chapter in your life, you're going to receive a lot of advice. Some of it will be really good advice. Some of it will be from people who have no right giving you advice, and they're going to give it anyways. But you're going to get a lot of advice, whether it's advice on school, on college, on what job you should pursue, what career, your friends or your relationships, on your time, or with your money. People are going to give you advice. The world is going to share with you what it believes success looks like for a life. And the world wants you to believe that it's something that you can build. It's all about what you can build, what you can aspire to become. All the wealth you can build, your status, your power, whatever it is, that's the world's idea of what a successful life looks like. It's someone who has a lot of money, someone who has a lot of power, someone who can... I'm blanking on a word. Someone who can push people to do things. But Jesus reframes what we ought to think success looks like. And we're going to look and pick up in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, starting in Matthew chapter 6 this morning. We're going to be in verses 19 through 24, and it says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." Now, when we break it down, Jesus is saying here that earthly treasure, it's temporary, it's fleeting, it's something that is fading away. Now, the issue here isn't that earthly treasures are intrinsically bad. No, it's just that they lack ultimate value. Past this life, our earthly treasures don't matter. You know, when people preach about treasures in heaven, they often talk about no one has a U-Haul attached to a hearse. They're not taking their things with them. Jesus says that these earthly treasures, they get destroyed or stolen, and they stay here. Now, there was a survey back in 1992 where people were asked how much money it would take for them, how much money they needed to make in order for them to have the American dream. Okay, now, it's not as big today, but the American dream, the results came back and it was kind of found that people thought that if they could just make about double what they were currently making, that's what it would take. If I could just make double, then I'll have the dream. If I can just make double, I will be successful. You see, we are a people that naturally treasure things. We always want more. We always are aiming to get more. It's natural for us. It's what we're taught from a young age and how we're raised. And as you enter this new stage in your life where you're going from nothing, you're starting over again, you're going to want more. But when we dedicate our lives to laying up those earthly treasures, we're actually setting ourselves up for failure, not success. When we are so dedicated to setting ourselves up for this life, we miss the point. And Jesus gives us the alternative. He says, instead of storing up treasures here on earth, store them up in heaven. Okay, seems easy, right? Let me just stroll on down to my local heavenly bank and put in a nice big deposit and let it gain some interest over time, right? That's what they've told us. Obviously, that's not what Jesus is saying here. There isn't no heavenly bank. So what does it mean to store up treasures in heaven? Jesus touches on it a couple times throughout his life, throughout his ministry, but he doesn't define it. He doesn't ever say, this is what treasures in heaven are. But Paul actually tells us what it looks like to store them up in 1 Timothy. And so in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 18 and 19, he writes, they are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of what is truly life. Paul says, do good, be rich in good works, be generous and ready to share. That's what Jesus is saying has eternal value. Those things. That's what it looks like to store up treasures in heaven. So instead of focusing on something temporary, Jesus points us to something eternal. Now, the good thing about eternal is that it doesn't mean just in the future. You see, when we are taught how to invest our money today, we often say, put your money in an account and don't touch it until the end of your life, and then you'll have lots of it, right? But the good thing about eternal is, yes, it is in the future, the very distant future, but it's also here. It's also now. It has value now. Treasures in heaven matter now. Jesus ends his section on treasures in heaven, and he says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It says if your heart is with God, it's where your treasure will be. If you are with God, you will treasure the things that he treasures. Now, one of the biggest things that God treasures is his people. It's obvious. Throughout the Bible, he's always doing things for his people. And so if our heart is with God and God treasures people, we also should treasure people. Doing good, being rich in good works, being generous, those are all about our interactions with other people. See, when we invest in earthly possessions and earthly treasures, it matters for us, and it may matter for a couple others around us. It impacts them, our family. The size of our bank account impacts our family, but heavenly treasures impact the entire kingdom. We don't just put things in a single bank account. No, it impacts the kingdom. And so, this eternal value is amplified and benefits the kingdom. Now, there's often this misconception that God needs you to give. He needs you to do it in order to do his will. No, that's not the case. God does not need you in order to do his will. He doesn't need you to give. He doesn't need you to serve. His will be done regardless of what we do. He wants to use us. He doesn't have to. Giving, the act of giving, is for us. It puts our heart and puts our trust where it ought to be, and that's with God. When we lean on our savings, when we lean on our possessions, our trust is in the things that we have. And you will find that when you have a lot of money, you tend not to be worried for a little bit. It feels good to have money. It feels good to be able to get out of a situation. But when something big happens, you start to panic because your trust is in what you have. Your trust is in what you can do with what you have. God's calling us to something higher, to invest in something higher, to put our trust in him so that regardless of what we have, we're reliant on him. Seniors, this congregation has stored up treasures in heaven by investing in you. The kingdom has been impacted by you. And whether you know it or not, this church has prayed for you, they've given to you, they've shown up for you, and they will continue to do it again and again and again. And as you move on, whether it's staying here or going somewhere far away, I hope that you find a community where you can invest, where you can serve, where you can give. Because when we're together, God says we're investing in something eternal. So seniors, if you don't hear any of the advice you get in the next couple of months, I hope you hear this. God has blessed you immeasurably. You each have been made with unique gifts and a unique purpose and a unique path designed specifically for you. And as you're sent out into the world, use those unique gifts to serve in a way that lasts for eternity. Bless y'all.